Hello and welcome to the Nittany Gritty, brought to you by the good folks at Beyond the Big Ten. I am Jon Sauber, Penn State men's basketball writer at the Centre Daily Times. He is Penn State men's basketball legend Tim Frazier. And Tim, we are coming from a new location for you.
Yeah, up in France now. Just jump back in there. It's like every time I talk to you, I'm at a new place, new city. So I just got out here today, man. Be out here for the next couple of months.
Yeah, listen, rumors that Metropolitans knew that they needed to replace Wemby and that there was no place to go better than Tim Frazier. That's what the people are saying.
That was the call, right? I get to live in Paris. And, obviously they had some history with Wemby last year, and so the opportunity came, and I jumped on it.
No, that's exciting. I'm happy for you. I know you're gonna have a few months out there. Paris is a lot of fun. Somewhere that I would love to get to at some point. A little more difficult when you're on my travel schedule and not yours. But yeah, it has been a weird few weeks, especially for Penn State basketball. Right? It's been sandwiched around arguably the best win of the season. I think probably not even close, really, or some strange losses. We're not going to go too in depth on these games, but Penn State drops to Northwestern and Purdue, then beats Wisconsin, one of the best teams in the country, and then loses again to Ohio State and Minnesota. But I think the thing to get into here is why this is kind of happening the way it is. Right? It's not really about what is happening, but what's going on that's causing it. And what we're seeing in these losses is a team that kind of can't put together a full 40 minutes, right? That Wisconsin game, if you ask guys around the team, guys on the team, Mike Rhoades, they'll talk about they put the 40 minutes together, right? That was the time they were able to do it. But they've, it's been like one good half here, one good 10-minute stretch there otherwise. And listen, you've been doing this for a long time, right? You've been on a lot of teams that I'm sure you've seen teams that you can kind of tell when it starts to fall apart, and teams that kind of, that adversity, when it strikes, it isn't going to hit you. What is the difference between a team that can put together a full game and the kind of inconsistent team that we're seeing now from Penn State?
I think that's those teams that can put together, full 40 or NBA 48 minutes. Those are the teams that they win games even when they play bad, because they're able to, sustain this, and they have a culture there, or they have the ability to play the same way that they've been playing. I think you said this team. You said it first. This team right now is just so inconsistent, but it's hard to even say like, hey, they're headed down this snowball effect of bad basketball, because at the end of the day, every time they get knocked down, they win another huge game. We talked about before this Wisconsin game. We saw how they came in, they beat Michigan State in a blowout, then they come back after that and beat Michigan. And then, now you have Northwestern, Purdue, two tough games. They fight with Northwestern and then lose again to Purdue, get blown out. Then after that, come back and you knock off Wisconsin at home. And so it's hard to see that this team is going to go down in this negative slope, or this is when the snowball is going to continue to roll. They continue to pick themselves back up, which I am proud of to see that. But it is hard to watch the games and even be a part of it when you see these laps and these faults first off, when the defense is not there. It's like, that's the staple. That's what this team is all about. Pressuring the ball, getting steals, and getting and pushing the pace. And when you see those things lack, that's where it's hard to follow. And you see the losses, and they again, we talk about the Minnesota game. They're up, they're winning, and then they blow that lead. Minnesota takes that win. And in the Big Ten, I know as well from covering them that, man, you have to win the games that you're supposed to win. And I think that game is going to hurt them again for whatever postseason that they think they're, that they might have a shot at.
Yeah, and not just like that you're supposed to win. Like, they really had that one in their hands, and they just fumbled it. You know what I mean? Like, first half they were crushing them, right? Like, it felt like that was just a matter of time until the floodgates broke open. They had a chance to win by 20 plus, right? And they fumbled it, and that's the. We talk about time and time again, like it's so hard to win on the road, and to have that kind of game at home that you blow a lead like that, it's really damaging to your resume for the season, like you said, for the postseason, but also I think for your psyche, for a team that we've seen, you mentioned they bounce back, like they're really good once they hit the mat, getting up off the mat, but when they get rocked, they have to hit the mat before they come back up, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's like they aren't ready to make that comeback until they're full. Yeah, right. Like they're fully going down, and so like they're going to Rutgers this week, and then Iowa, and then Indiana before coming back for Iowa. Like I'm not going to be surprised if they beat Rutgers, if they beat Indiana, because we've seen, that once it feels like they're down and out, that they can rebound. But yeah, it's tough to have confidence on a game to game basis, right? It's tough to have confidence that like what you're going to see from this team, and I think part of that is new coach, new culture, new everything. Mike Rhoades, we actually spoke to him today. He talked about that, the kind of, and he was very clear. He was not making excuses. He was asked about this, but he said it is harder, right? Like it's, you got to get buy-in for the press. And I give, Mike a lot of credit for when dealing with the media is like really straightforward, and it's really nice for us, and like is honest and open about stuff, and made it clear that like they have guys that want to press and are good at pressing, but to be good at putting on a full court press, you really have to want to do it.
Yeah.
And not all of those guys, barely any of those guys have done it long term. And so I think he's still kind of fighting that mentality shift too, right? Like getting guys to be bought in when they're pressing. And I'm sure, as like it's taxing to press for a full game, and you got to be like you got to be in a certain place mentally to do that kind of stuff. But I do think like maybe not buy into him isn't the issue, but buy into everything they're doing is kind of part of what's holding this team back right now, and part of why they can't get that full 40 and put it together.
And I think not necessarily, like you said, not necessarily it's not buying into culture, buying into the philosophy. It might be just buying into it that, hey, we got to do this every single play.
Obviously, talking yourself into mistakes, doing it. You know what I mean?
Every single play. Because that's when you say, hey, I'm going to do this in every single play, then you're talking 40 minutes of basketball. When you say, hey, man, I'm going to do it. All right, now we're down by 10. Now I got to step it up. Like now we got to do it like, or hey, we're up by 10. Let me relax. And that's where you don't get the 40 minutes. That's where you get the lackadaisical. That's when the press stops happening. That's when teams start going on runs. And then after that, as a player, and if you've seen watching many games that made once basketball is a game of runs. And it's hard to really stop runs from happening when they get going. It's like, I'm sure the listeners, when they know when, Steph and Clay start making threes and back in the world, you know what I mean? It's hard to stop that run. Like, it's nothing that you're going to do. You just got to try to call a timeout or something like that to slow them down. And that's just a game of basketball, just a game of runs. And you have to be able to lock in and say, hey, you know what? Of course, I might not get the steal here. Of course, I might get beat here. But at the end of the day, I'm still putting in the effort to be able to say, hey, man, I'm going to press for 40 minutes. I'm going to make this other team live in hell. I'm going to get it to them as much as possible. And yeah, they might beat me, but they're not going to be able to beat me all night. I also kind of feel bad for coach because you see these two, you have these two different teams. It's like, you don't know what team you're going to get. Hey, what team are we going to get next? Are we going to get a team against Wisconsin? Or are we going to get the team against Minnesota? Like you really just don't know. Or even, and I think that's just hard as a coach. I'm not a coach. I've never been a coach. I'm not sure if I ever want to be a coach, but I know I can see how tough that can be because you might prepare the same way as he did for the Wisconsin game. Now he prepared for the same way for the Minnesota game, but you get two different results because you got players, like you said, that aren't necessarily all in to, hey, the success that we got doing it against Wisconsin should be the same success that we have doing against Minnesota with the full 40 minutes.
And I don't want to speak for Mike Rhoades, but I have to imagine that feels like pretty helpless. You know what I mean? Because like you said, you're preparing like you're going to get that team that's going to put it all out there. And then I'm sure he knows when it's happening, right? That you can kind of get the feel for it because sitting up in press row, like you can kind of tell when it's snowballing. I think it was, I want to say early in the second half, I turned to Daniel Gallen, who covers Penn State for Lions 24/7. I said, they're going to lose this game. Like you could feel it. You know what I mean? You can feel the tide shifting. And when they kind of, like you said, take their foot off the gas a little bit maybe, or they're just not fully bought in, that effort isn't there. And then all of a sudden, you know what I mean? You're going downhill for a while. So I think it's really difficult.
I was saying even too, John, you start to think now, hey, all those fans that came to Wisconsin, all those fans that came out, storm the court, they come again, hey, team against Minnesota, they show up big time, and then, they lay an egg, and you sit there as those fans, and we talked about it before, and we've always talked about it, how we're trying to get all these fans to continue to come to the games, and I could just see how that, that could deter some people. He was like, hey, that was a fluke. Wisconsin was a fluke. Okay, some of those games on the road might be tough or whatever like that, but at home, we want that home court advantage. I tweeted something out about, it was tough for Wisconsin to play there. And, I got some people say some fans replied back and said, yeah, we were there, we were loud, we're gonna be here, support them no matter what. But you can tell, like, it's easy to say that, but then when the team doesn't perform the way they're supposed to perform, it's like, okay, cool. Do we really want to take that little trek down Main Street all the way up to, the Bryce George Center and it's snow and it's cold outside and I got class the next day? If you're saying, hey, we're going to get that team that plays against Wisconsin, then yes. And, if we're going to get the team against Minnesota, then probably not.
And I don't know if you could hear him, but my dog clearly very much agrees with you, barking along the entire time that you're in the right there. But no, it's one of those things where, they're fighting that uphill battle to get people there. And Mike Rhoades said it after the Minnesota game that he was really grateful for the fan support because that's the Thon game too. You know what I mean? That's always a big time game, with the crowd and everything. And he actually thanked the fans again today. Like it was one of those things like he was kind of hammering it home. And that he said in the past, and I think this is a good way to look at it. And like, listen, I'm a Philly sports fan, so you don't have to worry about like investment on my end when it comes to my teams. But he's trying to get this out of Penn State fans. Like, you want fans to go to that Minnesota game and then to be pissed off when they leave, right? Like you want them to be mad that they lost, right? Like not mad that they wasted time there, that they spent time there, but mad that they lost, right? Like you want them to feel the roller coaster of emotion because. Listen, it's college basketball. You're usually looking at like 20 to 22 wins at best. Like it's just kind of how it goes, in the sport. And so like you want that emotion though. Like I think he's trying to kind of almost redirect maybe some of what used to be frustration for going or frustration for attending or like, that same old Penn State basketball that you always hear into like, hey, no, this is good. Feel this, like be passionate about this and care about this.
Yeah, see, I think that was where I was hitting it at because, I heard that throughout my career. We would win big games and we would lose, bad games. And it was like, oh, it's the same old basketball. Same old Penn State basketball. They just tease us here and there. This team's not good. It was a fluke. And that's what I was getting at as far as like, you don't want that to be, especially the staple of Rhoades in his first year. We want to seem like, hey, this team fights their ass off no matter what. 40 minutes, they're going to press, they're going to pick up, you're going to have to beat them to beat them. The team's not going to beat themselves. And obviously, I'm talking, I guess in coach mode now, because these are still kids, they all still make mistakes, but I wanted to, I was speaking on that as far as the fans go, because I am appreciative to see them come to the games when I watch it on TV, to see them there and support and see them storm that court, and, against Wisconsin. And I don't want that to be deterred by, a bad game here. Yeah, So I want the players continue to show up and coach continue to do what he's doing, and the fans continue to do the same. Because I think this team has a chance to continue to get better. And who knows? Like, we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago. Who knows what the postseason might be, if there is a postseason, or just in general how far this can be something that's leading into next year.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing I'm most curious about, right? Because when I heard him today saying that, like, it's you have guys who have habits that they formed with other college programs that he's kind of break those habits and, get them to buy into a system that is not usual, right? Like teams don't press this much usually, right? Like this is not ordinary to play defense like this. And that's part of what has made him really good in the past. And so you're trying to get guys to buy in. And part of me wonders if, I'm not saying this is going to be, 4 years until Penn State is a good team or what have you. Like, I don't know what the future holds, but I do think the best versions of this program under Mike Rhoades are the ones that have his freshman guys are juniors, right? It's not necessarily going to be where we saw Micah Shrewsbury went to the portal and kind of build it quickly that way. I think this might be a slower build because you really do need a more specific type of player than maybe Micah Shrewsbury did, because you need that kind of buy-in, that kind of mentality where you're really just going to go for 40 minutes, right? Like you're willing to put it all out there for you, or 24 minutes or what have you, like whatever a guy's playing. Like, part of me wonders if maybe, this is it's just going to take longer, I think, than maybe it will otherwise. And once you get it going, then you can continue it rolling because you have it built. Yeah. But I think the way that Mike Rhoades wants to play defensively might lead to a longer, I don't want to call it a rebuild because it's college basketball. You can get things going pretty quickly, but to the type of buy-in that you need from guys that maybe aren't, a third-year guy coming in that spent 2 years at, I don't know, like, for example, like we've seen it this year, like at North Carolina, right, where they didn't play like this. Yeah, and Puff, like, to his credit, has been a great leader for this team all year and hasn't, like, been, I don't know, I don't get the sense that he's, like, pouting or anything like that. He's been really good about things, but I think he would probably admit that this year hasn't gone how he wants it to, right? Like he's just not playing a ton anymore. Like his minutes have gone down drastically. He's not shooting as well. And like, I'm sure for him, it's tough to adjust to this system, right? Because he's been in college basketball for a while and he's seen how this is supposed to look. So, or what it, it has looked like other places, I should say. I wonder if that buy-in and that, you just kind of have to get younger guys and let them be in the system for a few years. And then you supplement, right? You go to the portal to get maybe a shooter that you need or a guy, a big that you need. But the core of the team, unlike other places where you can build through the portal, I think this might look more like what we're used to in college basketball, where it's like get old, stay old. And I think that might have to be the case here.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think that could work. It's a matter of going in the portal and you get the freshmen and sophomores. Really, I'm really more thinking of freshmen, and that'll be guys that you see that fit the mold that you want to press, be in shape, have a high motor, and then continue to build through, like you said, your recruit. That's going to be the base thing. You got to build through recruiting as well as get guys, and like you said, you can go get specialty players outside. You can go get hey man, this guy, he was, or like a Jalen Pickett. Go get a guy from Siena or something like that. Well, obviously not as good as he was. We can go get a shooter. Go get a specialty
Funk
shooter.
is the guy that comes to mind for me that you can kind of get that guy and drop him down in and it'll work.
Right. I was speaking of Jalen just being from Siena, a smaller school, you know what I mean? So, but you go find somebody that's just those specialty players that you need to surround themselves that they can buy in. Because then it's easier, it's easier to say, hey, man, we're only trying to accommodate or get two, maybe three people on board compared to like in his first year. Hey, we're trying to get everybody on board besides Ace, So I think that's something that, obviously is telling in the season about how sometimes they're on one, sometimes they're off, because it's like, it's hard to get somebody that instilled, especially we talking about kids. Well, to get that instilled for 40 minutes and be able to compete and do that for full games. And we talk about next year, these guys that do stay, because I do, I hate to say it, but I do think guys are going to leave in the portal. But the guys the guys that do stay, they're going to have that. They already have a year under their belt of, hey, this is what it is. You know what I mean? So now I got all summer to continue to just prepare myself, get even better, get even stronger, get even faster, to prepare myself for the 40 minutes of defense that's going to translate for our team on the court.
And I think, you mentioned Ace. I think having him and Nick back next year are big, right? Because they're the culture setter guys.
Yep.
Yeah, and like I think getting those guys, them having more than 1 year of eligibility this year is huge, right? Like it's one of those things where they are the ones that usually, at least, are putting out that effort, are like leading they're the head of the snake when it comes to the press, right? Like they can, get things going and really start to turn it. And I think you notice this year when things are going well, like things are going well for those two in particular, especially on the defensive end. And so I think you're right. Like, I think if you're going to the portal, you probably want to target younger guys or specialty guys, like, and that's it. And I think, the freshman recruiting, you mentioned that too, like Miles Goodman, I believe is either their second or third best recruit all time at Penn State that is coming in next year at center. He moved into the top 100 on 24/7 recently, like long, athletic, the kind of skilled guy that you need as a big now. And I think that's going to be really important because, as good as Qudus Wahab has been, like on the boards and everything, and as a post scorer, I think the ball sticks a little bit too much with him, right? And I think that's, that happens more in college basketball than the NBA.
For sure. But I do like him on the boards. I think he's a beast on the boards. But again, he does need to pass the ball. I learn how to do that, get that out. But I think I'm not a big, but I've always felt that bigs feel like they don't get the ball as much, especially when they get it, the dynamic of this team is Ace and Kanye. Like especially Kanye really doing with dribbling a lot, maybe every now and then dip off here and there. So as a big, they have aspirations and dreams. Like, hey, I want to make the NBA too. I want to score this. I need to score this. I want to have big games. And so I see the whole, hey, when I get it, I got to score. Right?
I fully understand it. Yeah. If I were in that position, that ball would never come out. Like that is mine the rest of the game. But I think tell
him that, hey, man, I'm telling you, guys making millions and millions of dollars and never make a basket. Just pure rebounding and playing good defense on and pick and rolls, and you get paid a long time doing that.
Well, and I think we've seen too with, Demetrius Lilly's gotten more minutes lately as a backup big, and it's starting to turn more into a timeshare than a starter and a backup, I think. And we've seen Mike Rhoades, and he was actually asked about this today about like his willingness to pull Kudus just because like they kind of have Meach there who they trust to take up some of those minutes. And I think it's interesting to watch how the offense kind of shifts when one is compared to the other, because like the work on the boards, like it's important for Kudus, and he can score when he gets in deep. Like when he gets good post position, he can score better than Lilly can. But I think you see some of and I think some of this too is like Meach is a sophomore, Kudus is a 5th-year senior. Like he's just younger and more like it's more it's easier to be that junkyard dog as guys on the team have caught him with Meach. But like you've seen that there's a little bit more energy. The pick and roll is a little bit more dynamic than with Kudus. And so I'm curious to see what that kind of dynamic looks like the rest of the way as the season winds down, because I do think, there's been plenty of negative. There's been plenty of positive. And I think one of those positives this year is that, I don't know if he's the starter next year, Meach, but I do think like he is, you can play him, 20 minutes next year when maybe you didn't know if you had a big next year that you could trust. And I think having him come along has been really big. And he's the kind of guy like that Rhoades type, like high motor, like gonna buy into it all, gonna put the effort out there, and you can kind of live with the mistakes because maybe they're mistakes of aggressiveness rather than mistakes of passiveness or like mental mistakes necessarily. So I think that's going to be important too. But him and the rest of these young guys, I think I'm not turning the page to next season yet, but I think the guys that are coming back, this is the kind of time where we're going to learn who's bought into this, because it is really easy when the season goes south or the season starts to like when maybe that NCAA tournament goal is out of reach. And I mean, at this point it is, right? Like it's just not going to happen. But I think you'll learn about the guys coming back, like who's really invested in this, because they'll still be going hard, I don't know, on the road against Iowa in the third to last game of the season, right? Like they'll still be going hard and like be buying in. So I think we're going to learn a lot about maybe where some of the flaws are on this team and we're going to see who the guys are that are ready to go and ready to be, 100% bought into what Mike Rhoades wants to build here.
Oh, for sure. Like, just how college basketball is now, you're going to see guys whose plan is to stay here and be here next year. You'll see it. And that goes for everybody, top to bottom. Those games when that postseason is out of reach, and you get to those games at the end, and you kind of just like you'll see the guys that are, hey, you know what, let's just finish strong, be prepared for next year. Or you see the guys, hey, you know what, man, I'm ready to get out of here. You know what I mean? I'm just counting down the days, which is very unfortunate because Penn State is just a phenomenal school. Basketball as well. They have a good team and a good coach. So, the guys that do feel that way, which I hope they, prove me wrong, that none will be like that. But I think you got to finish it out because, I've been a part of a team where, hey, I was close and I went to the Big Ten tournament and won and made it to the championship. Or the teams after me where, they were already in the tournament and, hey, they said, you know what, let's go try to win the championship. You know what I mean? So you have something to fight for and in those games, anything can happen in March. So, like, all these games matter, even though when you do see, hey, man, we're going through this tough stretch. We just lost 2. We got Rutgers, at Indiana, 2 on the road. Hey, hopefully we don't. But if we do drop those 2, what are we going to do against Iowa at home? You know what I mean? So, like, it's going to be there. But, again, you'll see, who's bought in and who's really going to be there. And that'll be good for coaches to see as well. Because at the end of the day, now with college basketball, you have to make changes and you have to, be ahead of the curve before it happens.
Yeah, and like I tend to agree with you, right? You want to see guys finish out the stretch as long, even if they decide to transfer after the season, you want to see guys finish out the stretch. So you signed up for it. And I think some of it too, even
and
the guys that aren't coming back.
Your school paid for it to do that. You know what I mean? So and it's part of your job. Like
you're getting
it's not like
money too, right?
That too. It's like I'm not going to be in the NBA.
Revenue sharing.
Right. It's like, what are you going to pay for the Detroit Pistons right now? And, you only won 5 games. And they say, what are you going to say? All these last 5 games, I'm not going to go hard. No, you still got to play. You know what I mean? You can pay millions of dollars. You know what I mean? Obviously, it's not the same in NIL, but if you tell me that some of the players, some of the money that they're making right now, that's $1 million. That's the same comparison to what I was making in the NBA. You know what I mean? So I'm looking at it like, well, as a college student, and you give me a couple $100,000 or $50,000, or like that stuff can go a long way in my eyes. So,
yeah, and I think like even for the guys, like, listen, I don't think we're going to be, I'm not going to surprise anyone when I say this. A lot of these guys aren't going to play in the NBA, right? Most of them, if not all, right? Like, it's really hard. Like, there's a reason that the list of guys that have played, it's you, it's, Lamar, it's, it's right now it's Seth and Jalen. Like, it's not an extensive list, right? Like, it's really difficult. And so I think these guys need to, one, put some good tape out there for if they play overseas, right? Or if they want to make a career elsewhere, or two, like, if this is it, like, you don't want to finish your basketball career with a whimper, right? Like, you want to go out max effort and, putting it all out there. And so I think, like, there will be guys that want to keep playing basketball and, like, this is important for that reason. And there are guys who won't. And, like, it's important for the other reason, right? Like, you don't want the last memory you have of your basketball career to be like, yeah, we gave up down the stretch. And I don't think that will happen, but it's something to keep an eye on, I think, always, especially with maybe a team that the emotional investment kind of waxes and wanes, right? Like, it can be really high against Wisconsin. And then, like, you see against Bucknell, it looks like a team that doesn't have interest in being there. And so, like, you have these polar opposites. Like you said, it's like two different teams at times that you're watching this year. And so I think there's going to be a ton to learn. And I'm curious to see how this goes, right? Because it is easy. You lose 4 or 5, despite having an awesome win in there. Like, you got 2 road games now, and this team has not played well on the road. They're not responding well to, like, road environments and everything. And so, if that's becomes 6 of 7, you mentioned that Iowa game, that becomes a really interesting game, right? Yeah. Not just because it's, they at that point, it, could be 4, whatever in a row. It's like, this is where you find out. Right. And listen, we talked at the beginning of the year, the NCAA tournament really seemed, it didn't, I wasn't making the same declarations I was last year, put it that way, right? That I thought that this was a tourney team or anything, but you still want to see improvement. You want to see signs for the future, and they're there at times, but the harsh reality is sometimes they're not. And I think that is, that's going to be what, we're monitoring the rest of the way.
Yeah. I'm the same. I feel like every time we get that talk and we're like, hey, the next couple games is gonna tell us something. Like, we say that every game because of this team has just been so up and down. And but again, like I said last time, man, I'm proud of how they respond when they get knocked down. I hope, like you said earlier, I wish they didn't. They responded before they hit the canvas. But this is a prime time. They got 2 games on the road to get up their first Big Ten road win. I think all the wins that they've had have been at home. So, am I right about that, John?
Yeah, it's just Ohio, Michigan, obviously at the Palestra, but, like, that's a home game for Penn State,
right?
And Wisconsin. Now, like, the other thing is, like, those are 3 pretty good wins too. It's just
and an Ohio State win too early.
Yeah, you don't see it on the road. Like, you just don't see that kind of fire. And here's the thing: Rutgers and Indiana this year are gettable, right? It's they're winnable games against teams that maybe haven't lived up to expectations. Indiana actually didn't. It's funny. You and I talked about this. Indiana didn't shoot a single 3 the other night against Illinois, which, like, didn't make a single 3 the other night against Illinois, which is, like, wild. Like, it is 2024. I don't understand fully how this happens, but listen, they're susceptible to that. Like, and Penn State will shoot enough and will, press them enough that they can turn them over. Assembly Hall's tough, but I think that's a winnable game. So, like, I do think that, like you said, they respond when they hit the canvas. I think it's a matter of finding out, okay, did they hit the canvas after Minnesota, or is it going to be hitting the canvas after Rutgers? Right? Like, is that what it's going to take? But yeah, I'm curious to see how this is going to go. It's funny looking at this year compared to last year, the kind of, if you talked to you and I last January, I think this was right in the middle of Penn State's, like, downward stretch, right? Where it was like, I don't know how this is going to go. That team, very different than this one. 2 NBA players. Andrew Funk is in the G League, like, a very different level of team. But, like, things can change quickly, and this could become, like, maybe instead of looking like a team that's going to win, like, 12 games, maybe that becomes 14 or 15 if they hit the right notes. So it's going to be interesting to watch down the stretch. I'm looking forward to it. I know you were looking forward to it, and I'm sure you're looking forward to doing that from France now in Paris, rather than here stateside. But you and I will be keeping everyone up to date on these things as we continue to talk the rest of the way on the nitty gritty. But I think that's a good place to leave it for now. If you want to follow Tim on Twitter, you can find him at TimFraze23. You can find me at Jon Sauber. You can find all my work at CenterDaily.com. And you can keep track of Tim with the Metropolitans over in Paris now. I assume outdoing everything Wemby did over the last couple of years, but that's just me. But thank you for tuning in.
We'll see.
Have a great day.
See you.